Welcome back. Investigators say the murder of Georgia woman Debbie Collier was deliberate and personal as officials work to determine who killed the 59-year-old last month, leaving her body burned in the woods miles away from home. Collier was reported missing by her family on September 10th. A day later, her body was recovered naked in the woods more than 50 miles from her home. Authorities say her body appeared to have been burned and that she was gripping a small tree. Her cause of death is still not determined, but officials are calling her death a homicide. Collier was captured on surveillance footage purchasing several items at Family Dollar prior to being found. Those items, including a tarp and a red tote bag, were reportedly found near her body. The case grew more mysterious after it was revealed Collier sent her daughter nearly $2,400 through Venmo just minutes after Collier left the store. It reportedly had a note attached saying, "They are not going to let me go," though officials say there's no indication Collier was abducted. Terry, I know it's cliche, but follow the money. It often works. So does that $2,400 Collier sent her daughter just before she went missing seem strange? And could it be that she knew something was going to happen?
You know what, Brian, this entire case is extremely strange. You do have to follow the money, though. I agree with you there. And if you follow the money, you trace Collier's last steps, it really could be that there was an abduction and there was an attempt to extort her. Perhaps her abductors wanted her to purchase the materials to cover up her own body, and they didn't want those materials to be traced back to them. And if that's the case, then that's psychological terror. And maybe they wanted the money to come from the daughter, and the mother was trying to get the daughter the money. The prosecution's going to have to put this all together and make sure that they have a theory to tell their jury.
Yeah. And Dr. Pearson, obviously the police know more than us, but this murder looks more like it's sick and sadistic than deliberate and personal. But what do you think?
Sick and sadistic can, in fact, be deliberate and personal. It depends on the circumstances. I think we need to look at the information we have available. In this situation, we know that she was found naked. That could be humiliating, sadistic, if she were alive to appreciate it. But let's look a little bit further at what the police have said. They've said it's personal. Crimes that are personal tend to be things like stabbing, strangulation, poison on occasion. Gunshot wounds are not considered to be personal. That's typically done from a distance unless it's by execution style. So then we're left with torture. And when you look at the totality of the facts that we do know, and not including the holdback evidence that the police are hanging on to for the purposes of investigation, it remains to be seen whether this was really a personal event or a deliberate act that was done by people who didn't know her.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see what it ends up being. And switching to California, where closing arguments are presented in the trials of Paul and Ruben Flores as they face charges 26 years after the disappearance of Kristen Smart. The father and son were arrested last year for the 1996 disappearance of Smart, a Cal Poly student who went missing after an off-campus party in May of that year. Smart's body has never been found. Paul, who is charged with her murder, was reportedly the last person seen with her. His father, who's charged with accessory after the fact, allegedly helped cover up Smart's murder by burying her in his backyard and later moving the remains. The father and son are being tried in the same courtroom, but before two separate juries. Jurors have heard months of testimony from forensic experts, Smart's family members, and from women who testified about Paul's previous inappropriate behavior, including an alleged rape incident. Closing arguments in Ruben's case are set for Tuesday. After that, jurors will begin deliberating immediately. Paul faces a possible life sentence. His father could receive up to 3 years in prison. When we come back, jury selection begins in the Waukesha Parade massacre trial. Defendant Darrell Brooks is ordered to leave the courtroom after multiple outbursts. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. The family of Gabby Patito announces plans for a new bill that would help find missing persons. The bipartisan bill was introduced last week with Patito's father calling it, quote, a huge step forward. The legislation would provide funding to the National Missing Persons and Unidentified Persons System. It would allow the public to access the database and add to it. The bill would also create incentives to help states report missing persons and require the Department of Justice to create updated guidelines for how to handle a missing persons case. And jury selection begins in Wisconsin for the Waukesha Parade massacre trial, days after a judge ruled defendant Darrell Brooks could represent himself. Brooks causes multiple disruptions in the courtroom and is even asked to leave. Prosecutors say Brooks drove his vehicle into the annual Waukesha Christmas parade last November, killing 6 people and injuring dozens of others. Officials say Brooks did not stop driving even as victims banged on the hood of his vehicle, motioning for him to stop. He now faces a total of 77 charges related to the incident, including 6 counts of homicide by vehicle. Last week, Brooks made a motion to represent himself, claiming to be a sovereign citizen. After 2 hearings with multiple outbursts from Brooks, presiding Judge Jennifer Darrell found Brooks competent to represent himself. On Monday, jury selection began as both sides worked to whittle down a 12-person jury with 4 alternates from a pool of 340 people. Judge Darrell called multiple recesses in court even before the lunch break, as Brooks argued he doesn't recognize the name Darrell Brooks and demanded, quote, verified proof that he is a United States citizen. Dr. Pearson, the judge indicated she could revoke Brooks' right to represent himself at any time. In a trial that's expected to last for weeks, could that move be likely?
Yes, absolutely, Brian. Frankly, I think her decision was ill-advised because what we've seen is somebody who's completely disruptive and who doesn't recognize the name and sees himself as a sovereign citizen, whatever that means. And so he's hurting himself and he's hurting the judicial process.
Yeah. And Terry, could Brooks not recognizing his name have anything to do with him being a sovereign citizen? For those unfamiliar with a case like this, what sort of obstacles could that provide for the prosecution?
Absolutely, Brian. Not recognizing his name could really have something to do with the fact that he has declared himself a sovereign citizen. And that just means that he doesn't recognize the government or certain governmental processes unless he consents. And so what we're going to see here is him opting in and opting out to agree with certain processes. We've already seen he didn't want to say, I understand, when the judge was talking to him about his rights and about the risks of representing yourself. He only wanted to say, I'm aware of that, I have been informed. So I think it's going to be a very difficult case for both the prosecution, and it's going to be extremely difficult for the judge. So I think she should have ruled the other way.
Yeah, we'll see how this continues. Well, thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.